나는 그렇게 될 수밖에 없지. 이런 운명론은 하나님의 섭리를 전혀 이해하지 못한 데서 온
모세는 제단을 쌓고 그 이름을 여호와 니시라고 했죠. 우리가 했다고 여기면 기념비를 세우겠지만 여호와께서 하셨기 때문에 제단을 쌓았습니다.
하나님의 시간을 사시는 분들은 하나님의 진리로 그 삶을 인도받습니다. 그 삶의 인도함 속에서 하나님이 주시는 양식을 만나게 되세요.
2025년도부터는 오직 이스라엘 그 땅에는 이스라엘 국가 하나만 존재하게 될 것이다. 이 말이 세계 최강의 국가 미국의 국방장관 지명자 입에서 이루어집니다.
All right, are you ready for the Hebrew letter Lamed? Yay! We're going to have Sherry by video here in about 5 minutes. I'm going to talk a little bit about the letter Lamed, and then we'll show you how to draw that letter. So, to begin with, here's the, go and put the first picture. Lamed. Okay, Lamed is the 12th letter. It has a numerical value of 30, and it means basically control or authority. In the ancient Hebrew, it looked like a shepherd's staff, and here it is kind of like going to pull the sheep out of the ditch. But the Lamed represents a shepherd's staff, symbolizing having control or having authority. Now, how many of us know this word here that have been taking the Hebrew class so far? El, short for Elohim. Okay, El, this is the word for God. Do you remember what the letter Aleph looked like in the ancient picture language? It was an ox. Okay, so in the ancient Hebrew, God was a strong authority, or the Aleph is first. He was the first authority. And so together we see, as we know, every Hebrew letter is pretty much a word. And the letter Lamed is the word Lamed, and it means to teach or to learn. So the picture was a shepherd's staff. The numeric value is 30, and it means to have authority. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 1, it says, "These are the commandments, the statutes, the judgments, which the Lord your God commanded to teach you." And the Hebrew word for teach is lamed. So that letter is a word, and it means to teach. Well, in Deuteronomy 5:1, it says, "Moses called all of Israel and said, 'Hear, O Israel, the statutes and the judgments which I speak in your ears this day, that you may learn them.'" And the Hebrew word for learn is lamed. So lamed is a letter. It makes the L sound. Lamed is a word. Now, as I said, it represents a strong authority or the first authority. And it's the 12th letter, right? I think it's interesting that Yeshua is the teacher of teachers, and he has his disciples who are known as the Talmudim, and you see the word Lamed within the word Talmudim, and even the Talmud, some of you may have heard of the Talmud, you have that word Lamed in the middle of it, which means to study or learning. Now in Judges 3:31, it talks about one of the judges. His name was Shamgar. And it says that he slew of the Philistines 600 men with an ox goad. Well, what's interesting, you can see Lamed, the word Lamed, and the goad represents the shepherd's staff, that they would goad the sheep. So I wanted to give you a little idea of the word Lamed as a root word as well, and it represents a shepherd's staff or a goad. Matter of fact, the word means to goad, to sting, as a shepherd would prod his sheep along. Now, when you have lamed at the beginning of a word, it means to or for the king. So, example, you could have lamelech, which means to the king or for the king. Now, I want to show you some examples here of some anomalies that you never see in English, but you see in Hebrew. This verse is from Exodus 19:5. Well, not this verse, but this Hebrew word is in Exodus 19:5. And God says, if you will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, then you shall be a peculiar treasure to me. All right? And here the lamed is made real big in Hebrew. Now, of course, you don't see that in English, but the word to me here, the lamed is made really big. And they say this oversized lamed, and the yud that's been made smaller, they say, is so that they would realize as a treasured people to God, it's when they humble themselves and make God larger. Okay, so God represents the lamed. He's the first authority. So here now the lamed is real big and the yud is made small, and the yud representing them humbling themselves, making God larger, they become that peculiar treasure. Now there's another verse where the lamed is made very, very small in Hebrew, and this is in Lamentations. Remember in Lamentations, that's Jeremiah mourning the destruction of the temple. And it says here, is it nothing to you, all you that pass by? And those that know Hebrew, lo is no. And here, this is the word for nothing, but the lamed is shrunk down. And they say this indicates that when Jerusalem went into exile, it reached the lowest point in the nations, and its position as a leader was reduced. So Israel was to be a lamed, the teacher, teaching Torah, but because they disobeyed God, here the temple is destroyed, and now Israel as a nation has been made smaller in the eyes of the nations. Now there's another interesting anomaly in Hebrew. You have this real big lamed in Deuteronomy 29:28. And this is where it's prophesied that the Lord is going to root Israel out of the land in anger and in wrath and a great indignation, and he's going to cast them into another land as it is this day. Well, this is the word for and cast them, all right? And the lamed is made really big in Hebrew. And they say, the sages say that this shows that God will use this ejection out of the land to do what? To teach the nations. The lamed means to teach. And so as they're cast in the lands, they will teach the nations. But then it says prophetically, when he brings them back to the land, the lamed represents the shepherd's staff that is made large, and he will be gathering all of Israel back to the land in the last days. Okay, they also say God, like the king lamed, was to be at the center of Israel. They didn't want him to be king and to reign over them, and they limited him. And they cast him out, so therefore he cast them out. Now, lastly, this is kind of fascinating. We have the Hebrew word for tongue is lashon. Okay? And you can see it begins with the letter lamed. Well, how many of you know what do we do with our tongue? We teach with our tongue. And so the Hebrew word for tongue begins with this letter. And it also, the lamed, if you remember, means to what? Control. And what is the one thing we need to control? Okay, we need to control the tongue. As a matter of fact, in James 1:26, it says, if any man among you seems to be religious and does not control his tongue, he deceives his own heart, and his religion is in vain. Now, I'm going to show you in the ancient picture language what that word lashon would have looked like. If you remember, the lamed is the shepherd's staff, representing authority and to control. The shin, if you remember, was fangs, means to consume and to destroy. The vav is the connector, and the ancient letter nun means life. It was a fish darting through life. And so when you look at the ancient picture language and you start with the letter nun, life and death are in the tongue. So even in the ancient picture language, we see life and death are in the tongue. And that's what it says in Proverbs 18:21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. So Lamed represents to control, it represents authority, it means to teach, it means to learn. And we can see all of that inside the letter Lamed. And so now Sherry is going to take over and show you how to draw the letter Lamed. Take it away, Sherry.
So Lamed says ul, like in love or letter. Everybody say it. Ul. Very good. So we see that Lamed is the tallest letter in the alphabet, and it's the only letter that rises above the midline, as you can see. And when you look in your Hebrew Bibles, you'll see Lamed is the only letter sticking way up high. And it is made with a vav and a kaf. So those are the two letters that make up the Lamed, the vav and the kaf. And if you change the order of the letters on either side of the Lamed in the alphabet, you get the word melech, the mem, the lamed, and the final form of the kaf. Remember, this is the kaf, and it has this final form because the bottom curve straightens out. So here we have melech, and that is the king. And of course, lamed represents the shepherd king. If you take the gematria of the two letters that make up the lamed, you have the vav, which is 6, the kaf, which is 20, equaling 26, which is also exactly the gematria of the yud, hey, vav, hey, which is the yud is 10, hey 5, the vav is 6, and the hey is 5. So lamed equals the same as yud, hey, vav, hey in the gematria. Pretty amazing. Kaf represents the good deeds that we do, and vav is like a flame or a reflection of our good deeds. So our good deeds should reflect and show that our love for God and His Word. Matthew 5:14 and 16 says, "You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bushel. Instead, they put the light on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven." So when you see the lamed, you think of those good deeds shining, giving glory to God. Now, lamed is one of those letters that becomes a prefix, and a prefix is something that you attach to the beginning of a word, and it adds meaning to the word. So lamed, when you attach it to the beginning of a word, means to or toward. So if I put a lamed in front of the word melech, then I'm going to have lemelech, which means to or toward a king. Now remember, we have other letters that we've already learned that we also can prefix to the front of a word. One of them is kaf. You can prefix that. It means as. You can prefix the hey. That means the. You can prefix the vav, which means and you can prefix the bait, which means in. So let's try it. Let's say that I want to say the king. Which letter would I prefix to the word king? Hey, exactly. So it would look like this. So then we'd have hamelech. Then what if I wanted to say as a king? Which letter would I prefix to the word melech? Exactly, I would prefix the kaf. And now it would say kamelech, as a king. What if I wanted to say and a king? Which letter would I prefix? The vav. Excellent. So there we have the vav and a king, v'melech. And right on down the line, and as you see, we already did the lamed, meaning to or towards. So that's how the Hebrew language works. It's pretty fun, really. It's pretty amazing, really. So we haven't written the lamed yet. Let's try that all together. We're going to write the vav like a flame, and then we're going to write a kaf showing our good deeds, and it's all one stroke. So you come down and make the kaf. Down and make the kaf. So it's really a fun, beautiful letter to write. All right, let's do some reading. Let's just first review the vowel points. If I have a dot underneath the letter, it's going to say E. So the lamed says ol. The yud is silent in this case. And so what's this going to say? Li. And that means to me. So here we have the to or toward in a word. Now, okay, so now here the vowel point is above the lamed. Everybody see that? When you see that dot above a letter, it's going to say O, so you're going to say the sound of the letter first, lo. And that lo means no in Hebrew. You say it, you hear it a lot over there when you're in Israel. Okay, now here we have the lamed with 3 points that are going to say A. So we're going to say lev, lev, and that means heart. Now we have 2 dots under the aleph, so it's going to say A, and the lamed, which is going to say ol, so we're going to say el, and that's the word for God. Then we're going to come over here, and remember the dashes under a word or lines under a word are going to say ah. So we're going to have la med. You don't know the mem yet, but that makes an M sound, and that means to teach. And that's one of the meanings of the word lamed, to teach, because a shepherd teaches the flock where to go. So we have lamed. Here we have kala. Kala is to finish. Now we have ki-la. Ki-la is to cease. And here's a word you don't even need vowel points for. It's halal. And did you know that the meaning of your tongue is made to praise, and this is the word to praise. So lamed can also mean the tongue. And that's what the tongue is made for. The Lord repeats it twice for us in the word halal. So we'll be sure to remember that our tongues are made for praise, and that is our amazing lamed. Thank you for being here.
And next week, we're going to tackle the letter mem, which I mentioned a little bit already today in the service. So mem is next week. Thank you. We'll see you in about 15 minutes.